Hello, everyone, and welcome to Live with the Pricing Lady. I am Janine Liston, your hostess. This show is all about helping small business owners get better at pricing so you can be more sustainably profitable and be there to serve your clients and customers well into the future. Today, I have a very special guest. Please help me welcome Geraldine Carter.
Hi, Janine. How are you?
Hi, Geraldine. I'm so excited to have you here with me. Geraldine is the founder or the owner of She Thinks Big Coaching. We're going to kick this off with a few rapid fire questions. Let's get started. Geraldine, where are you joining us from today?
Oh, Ketchum, Idaho, right in the smack in the middle of the state. And for your European listeners, way in the northwest of the US.
The northwest of the US. Excellent. It's somewhere I have not been since I was a child. Well, Idaho. I'm not sure if I've been to Ketchum, but I haven't been to Idaho since I was a kid. So maybe we'll have to rectify that at some point.
Yes.
Next question. So, one song that you would call the soundtrack of your current life?
Oh my gosh, it's the one by Earth, Wind, and Fire. Do you remember? It just gets me going, gets me in the groove. Yeah, it just gets me going, gets me energized, gets me on my day. That is the
Yeah,
best
yeah.
place to start.
Excellent. Love it. What is your superpower? And what would you call yourself if you were a superhero?
Sure. So, what my it's hard to see your own superpower.
Mhm.
I just think it's normal, but people tell me time and again that I'm able to find the heart of the problem very quickly. That I just ask the right questions, I find my way in, and I don't mess around with the fluff and try solving things that are just symptoms.
Mhm.
That my ability to inquire and get to the taproot of the problem and start
Mhm.
addressing that so that lots of problems get solved at once. That's apparently what people say to me is my superpower. That just feels normal and obvious. Like, why would you waste your time solving
Right.
superficial problems? But apparently other people don't have this superpower.
Mhm.
So if I was a superhero, what would
Mhm.
the cape look like? Maybe it would be like the letters PS on the back, where I swoop in and go right to the heart of the matter.
Do.
Yep. Dum, da-da-dum, da-dum, da-da-dum.
Do. That's great. I love that. I had a guest on last year, and she said, what I do feels like easy for me, but it's magic to other people.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's the point here. What you do, getting to the root of the problem there, is really magic for other people. Yeah,
Yeah.
super. What's one interesting thing most people don't know about you?
So I told you this story in the green room, and really what I said is I'm an open book. I have a podcast. I tell all kinds of stories, and it's hard to hold me back.
Right.
So there's not much that people don't know about me, but
Mhm.
one story that I haven't shared is that when I was in grade school, I was a state champion archer for 2
Mhm.
years in a row,
Mhm.
and, both those years, I beat my boyfriend. He came in second, and that's been a running theme in my life.
Very good. So archery, something that I've always been curious about, but never done. So, do you still do that at all, or?
I don't, but maybe when I pick up my hobby next, like, I have 2 little kids, so archery and kids don't really go together.
Yeah.
But, once I'm sorta out of the early years
Uh-huh.
and there's ample discretionary time for hobbies
Right.
once again, I would love to pick it back up because there's something that is so meditative about it,
Mhm.
and there's also, for us linear thinkers,
Right.
which I am one, I have an engineering background, I love the sort of the hunt for precision, and I
Mhm.
love the repetition of it, and that if you can just get into a groove
Right.
and figure out and just stay there and, like, with each passing arrow, you get a
Mhm.
little closer and a little closer and a little closer, and then the
Right.
satisfaction of dialing it in and just getting bullseye after bullseye after bullseye is so
Right.
fun.
Wow. Sounds amazing. It sounds like one of those things that you could use as an imagery in the branding around your business as well, right? Because you're so focused on the problem itself, and it
Yeah,
kind of all
yeah.
builds on this archery thing of hitting the precise point that you need to hit, right?
Yeah, and it's a great analogy with pricing because, pricing is a process of zeroing in on what works,
Yeah.
and I help my clients, at the outset, they are their shoulders are not even squared off to the target.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a bit of art and a bit of science to pricing. And
Mm-hmm.
until you have until you have not some basic understanding. So my
Right.
cat's going to join us for this episode. Until you have some basic understanding, you're just firing arrows off into the forest. And I
Right.
help my clients figure out, get their shoulders squared off to the target so
Right.
that we can start zeroing in on what's going to work for them.
Right. Right. Excellent. So that leads me into my last question, which is what value do your clients really get from your product or service?
Yeah. So we're kind of getting into some of the more content
Mhm.
of what I do.
Mhm.
And with CPAs, they've for so long in the industry been taught to hourly bill. It's kind of how things roll in the space.
Mhm.
And it's led to a number of problems that include pricing deliverables, the delivery of the profit and loss, the balance sheet, and it includes just being a generalist and doing work for anybody because they ask you for it. So hourly billing sets up a number of other sort of second ring, third ring problems, if you
Mhm.
will. And what we do with pricing is it really forces us to question those sort of ancillary challenges,
Mhm.
like being a generalist, like the value of delivering a P&L and a balance sheet. And the answer very quickly becomes, if you want to provide value and capture the value in your prices, then it absolutely makes sense to become an expert in a narrow field, to
Mhm.
deepen your expertise,
Mhm.
to focus on the value that you bring rather than just the deliverables and the reports, and
Right.
then to price accordingly. So the value that I bring is not just in the pricing, it is sort of the
Mhm.
wholesale. Transformation is maybe a bit too strong of a word, but it is,
Mhm.
we we take what the CPA is doing in terms of, you're not getting enough attention from me. We take what the CPA is doing in terms of
Mhm.
the delivery of reports for their clients, and we transform the value that they bring to their clients by
Mhm.
helping the client keep more cash in their pocket, basically. And that's
Right.
what we price.
Right. Right. Exactly. The value that you bring, which is ultimately then the money that they're keeping in their pockets.
Yeah,
Super.
and the clarity of the decisions, the
Right.
ability to make proactive decisions instead of
Mhm.
having to sell things off in a fire sale because you didn't save for taxes, and so on.
Right. 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 Okay, cool. So now I'd like to turn the conversation towards your own personal pricing journey. So if you can think back to when you first started your business and you first had to start putting prices on what you do, what was that like for you?
Bewildering, in a word, because I was like everyone else and didn't understand what pricing was and
Mhm.
what it could do and how it worked.
Mhm.
And I had come from a space of having worked jobs for wages.
Mhm.
And then I owned a business that we eventually converted to a 501(c)(3, and where the value was more in the direction of what did the donor value, but there was definitely no sort of, my job, my role as co-founder
Mhm.
and my own earnings, if you will, were completely and utterly disconnected from the value that we provided for our participants and for their supporters.
Mhm.
So there was very little question in that space of how do I price what I do, because there was
Mhm.
just the disconnect was so strong that it was never a question. When I
Mhm.
went out on my own as a consultant and was suddenly forced to answer the question, how do I price what I do and the value that I
Mhm.
give to my client? Suddenly, I was forced to become aware and grapple with this question of, how do you value and how do you price?
Mhm.
And it was, for me, such a giant question. There was so much that I still needed to learn,
Mhm.
that I basically just looked at what other people were doing and kind of copied off of them. And looked at other consultants' websites and I said to myself, well, if they're charging this for that, then okay, how about I start
Mhm.
there and charge this for that?
Mhm.
So I was in this place of, um, excuse me, trying to establish what my value was based on what
Mhm.
other consultants were valuing, which is, kind of messed up, but you have to start somewhere.
Right,
And
it's very
then,
typical, right? It's very typical, especially for service-based businesses, to look at what everybody else is doing and then often set your prices a little bit below that, is what most people
Right.
have told me they do.
Right. They've been doing it longer. They
Yeah,
probably are better at it. Therefore, I
yeah,
should price a little bit lower because clearly my customers are buying on price, which is
right.
what you come to find out, not true.
Right. I think that's really important. Can you say that again?
Right? That you think that customers are buying on price,
Mhm.
but that's not true. I mean, it may be true in some instances,
Right.
but and oftentimes it is a factor. I don't want to belittle the factor of price to
Mhm,
suggest that you could
mhm,
just charge whatever you want because that's not the
mhm,
case either. But but price is just one of many factors, and usually if the price is in the sweet spot, if it's in the right zone,
mhm,
meaning that the value to the client is greater than the price that you're charging,
mhm.
then price kind of just checks a box for them,
Right.
and they're answering then they move on to other more important questions, like,
Mhm,
"Is this the right person for me? Is this my person? Am I going to be able to work with her? Do our
mhm.
temperaments match?" That's a
Right.
question that is not even a conscious question, it just sort of like
Mhm.
it's subconscious and you know it right away, either yes or no, like,
Right.
"I cannot work with this person," or, "Yeah, we're a match." And,
Right.
"Does she solve my problems?" Do I
Mhm,
have um am I reasonably confident that this person can help me figure out
mhm,
what I'm looking to achieve and help me get
mhm,
there. That's
mhm.
those are some of the, I think, higher level questions that
Right.
your buyers are looking to answer
Mhm.
once your price box has been checked and they've moved on
Right.
from it. They're like, "Yeah, yeah, that sounds fine."
Right. Right. So one of the things you mentioned in the questionnaire that I have, right,
Mhm.
is that it felt very mysterious. Can you maybe explain what you mean by that?
Sure. So, I have an engineering degree from an Ivy League university. There were a lot of things that I was taught in the space of numbers, math, formulas, all of it. But one of the things that we never discussed,
Mhm,
ever, was pricing, right?
mm,
And granted, I wasn't in business school, but the topic of pricing in, 20 years of great education came up one time in 10th grade with my medieval history teacher who threw a graph up on the chalkboard, which I don't think they have anymore, that was basically supply and demand. And he's like, this
mhm,
is how you determine price, supply and
mhm.
demand. Why that came up in a history class, I do not know, but it did. It's the only thing I was ever taught about pricing.
Right,
So
right.
we come into business and for those of us who follow a trajectory of,
Mhm,
work for wages until you're 35 and then think to
mhm.
yourself, I could do this on my own. And we go out and we like depart our company and we're like, here I go. And trumpets blare and we're like, I'm going out on my own. I'm going to hang my shingle. I can make 4 times the money that I'm making for this other guy. Why am I making him rich when I could do this myself? And you go out on your own, right? We've a lot of us have had that journey. You go out on your own, you hang your shingle, and you're like, "Here I am, world, everybody hire me." And you're like, "How do I price myself? Like, what do I know about
Right.
pricing?" Well, supply and demand. And you quickly come to realize, like at the beginning, there's no demand. you, you don't have
Mhm.
any demand when you've just set your shingle out. Maybe you have
Right.
your clients that you've taken with you from your past business, so you have a
Mhm.
little bit of demand, but that's not going
Right,
to work. And suddenly you're
right.
faced with this question of like, what is pricing? And it's mysterious because most of us have not been taught anything about it, and
Mhm,
we don't really know that it's even a topic that we could learn about. How many
mhm.
of us have friends who majored in pricing in college? Probably none of us. So, it's like,
Mm,
this is something I could even learn about? How do I even learn about
mm,
this? And then so I set about, of course, go as one does, going to Amazon
mhm,
and just typing in pricing and buying all the books I could find on pricing, and I probably made it
mhm.
through 6 before I was like, "Okay, I think I've got the gist." Right? And you can see them, they're all, like, lined up on the back behind
Yeah,
me.
yeah, mine are all over here.
Right, right. And the thing is that you come to find out I came to find
Right.
out that there's a lot to be learned about pricing.
Mhm,
There's so much more to be learned about pricing than you would ever need to know. And
mm,
what we need to know as business owners about pricing in our own business is what
mhm,
pricing tools do we need for our business
mhm,
based on the business model that we have.
mhm,
And to be more specific, if you run inventory, you're gonna need to know a lot of stuff about pricing that relates to inventory
mhm,
and e-commerce
mhm,
than you would need to know when you run a service-based business.
mhm,
If you run a service-based business, the breadth of material that you need to know to run to price in a service-based business
mhm.
is and you tell me what you think about this because you're the
Mhm.
pricing lady, but I think is like completely and wholly separate from what you need to know about pricing if you run commerce and inventory. I would almost say there's like very little overlap.
Mhm.
So what I came to learn was like, oh, I'm glad I learned all these tools about on the breadth of pricing, but really what I need to know is actually
Mhm.
quite simple and quite
Mhm.
finite. When I
Mhm.
saw that, I was like, oh, this is really great. And
Right.
then what I did was take that and say, how can I help my clients price better
Mhm.
in what they need to know? Because pricing
In
for
the
CPAs
context.
and accountants is also narrow and finite. You
Mhm.
don't need to know the whole breadth. You just need to know
Right.
this little bit. And when you know it, it makes a huge difference in your
Right.
business.
Right. Right. Yeah, so I approach it a little bit differently. The process is the same, but we put our energy and focus on different aspects of the process.
Mhm. Yeah.
Of course, when you're a product-based business, you have to put a lot more emphasis on the cost, especially the fixed
Mhm.
cost or variable cost side. And when you're a service-based business, you're putting a little bit more emphasis on other areas. But what I found, and maybe you found this too, I don't know, is that what most businesses, product, service, software, or other, tend to really lack is an understanding of the value.
Yes, 100%,
That's
1,000%.
universal.
It's very difficult to see your
Yeah.
own value
Yeah.
because you think the value is in what you do and what you deliver.
Hmm.
And the value for the client is almost orthogonal, like it exists in a completely different space.
Hmm. Hmm.
So the value for the client is oftentimes help me get rid of my headaches.
Right.
Help me make this friction free and make this painless. Like, especially, I'll just speak for my
Hmm.
people, taxes, accounting. Like, help me so that I don't even have to think about it.
Right.
Right? Where the accountant, the CPA is like, I'm going to help you understand your numbers. And the
Hmm.
client's like, I don't even want to understand my numbers. It's
I
not
don't
what I
care.
want. It's like
Just tell me
totally
what I
orthogonal. That's
know.
why, yeah, it's why I say value exists in a different plane. It's like in a different plane,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's hard to get out of your own head when you're the
Hmm.
service provider for my people, I'll say, um, because we love what we do
Hmm.
and we think that what we do is so important. And granted, accounting and tax, it is important. But oftentimes it's not what your buyer wants. What your
Hmm.
buyer like the
Yeah.
thing that you're offering is a small wedge in in the
Hmm.
giant pie of their business.
Hmm.
And what they want is for it to be as simple as possible. They
Right.
want it to be as pain-free, as friction-free as possible. They want the
Right.
experience to be seamless and simple and effortless.
Hmm. Hmm.
And those are the things that tend to make it valuable for the buyer.
Right.
Not things like in the minutia, like I'm the most accurate, the most honest, the one with the most integrity, the one who's going to get you your stuff on time.
Right.
Like it's just table stakes.
Right. Or that, like I see with coaches a lot. Well, I can do NLP and I can do energetic
Mm,
healing and I can do blah blah blah.
yeah,
And they list like this laundry list of things they can do, but ultimately those may be benefits, but the value comes out of the ones of those that are actually important and solve the client's problem in the end, right?
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I don't care if you can do NLP, just make me feel better.
exactly. But because that's the wheelhouse where
Mhm.
the person is comfortable, the coach, if in this case, is comfortable, then that's what they feel comfortable talking about. But
Right.
it misses the point that the value is what comes out of those benefits. I
Mhm.
always think back. You remember the commercial from was it? I'm guessing it was the '80s. Where's the beef? Where's the beef?
Yeah.
Where's the beef?
Yes, totally. Yes.
Where's the value? Where's the value?
Yeah, where
Look
is
under,
the
look
value?
between the two pieces of bread, right?
Right.
Where's the
Don't make me
value?
hunt for it. Don't make me hunt for it. If you want it to be easy, if you wanna sell it easily,
Right.
make it really apparent, like, sell the beef,
Yeah. Yeah.
sell the
Yeah.
value.
Exactly. So something else you mentioned that pricing is more art than science,
Yeah.
but that at the outset you really had to understand the science. Can you tell us a bit more
Mm,
about that?
yeah. So, at the outset I'll say that my favorite of all the books I've read on pricing, I think the one that's been most helpful for me is Alan Weiss's Value-Based Fees, which you can see it's the orange one back there.
Mhm.
And he talked about the art and the science, and he was also laying out the case that it is much more art than science. And as a science person, I was like, but help me, give me some science to start, right? Because if I just start with art, I'm just going to
Right.
be like Jackson Pollock, and I don't know what's going to go on the canvas. So, so give me some kind of formula that I can at least start with.
Mhm.
And I understand that despite my desire for there to be an algorithm that I can have X, Y, and Z, and I can just plug things in and f of X, and it's going to spit out this thing, and it's going to be all nice, and I'm going to have the exact right price down to the decimal point. I
Mhm.
understand that that doesn't exist. Okay, fine. But give me something to go on, right?
Yeah.
So he was kind enough in his book to give us linear thinkers something to go on, right? And that is to establish once you can. So here's how I do it for my people and
Mhm.
for me too.
Mhm.
Although I find it much easier to price for my people than I do for myself because, like we're talking about, it's so much harder to see your own.
Right.
So I have the good fortune of working with people who can actually generate quantitative value for their clients, right?
Mhm.
Typically, most obviously in the form of tax savings. I can save
Mhm.
you $500,000 in taxes, right?
Mhm.
That is like a lovely starting point when it comes to being able to price, to have a dollar number that I can save you.
Absolutely.
So we start there,
Mhm.
and then we go to how can I make the service excellent?
Mhm.
How can I make the experience excellent?
Mhm.
By things like making it super simple to onboard, making the experience of working with you super seamless,
Mhm.
um, having white glove concierge service, if you will. So if you need me to talk to your financial advisor, I will. If you need me to talk to your estate
Mhm.
planner, I will. And then what's the value of that, right?
Mhm.
And then we just put a number on that, and it is 100% arbitrary,
Mhm.
which for us linear thinkers, us mathy people, I'm talking me and over in the CPA land,
Yeah.
is a very uncomfortable place to be, and I get it.
Mhm.
But what we like is experiments and testing. My people are
Right.
okay with experiments and testing, right?
Right.
So we put an arbitrary number on it, and I say, it is arbitrary. Got to get used to it. You're going to be okay, and
Mhm.
you're not going to die. And then we go out and we test it in the marketplace. I say, and I have I've got enough examples and experiences with other clients
Mhm.
that I can say with some degree of confidence, I think this number is reasonable. I think this is going to
Right.
fly. Let's go test it.
Right.
And the worst thing that they say is no. And that's
Right.
fine. Now we have a data point. Great. We love a data point.
Exactly. You have science.
Yep. Now we have science. That's exactly it. Is that we create the science.
Right.
You've got it like
Sure,
where you only
especially
have art, you go create the science by
right.
creating data points for yourself.
Right. Right.
So we go out and we
Especially
test it.
when you're working with CPAs who kind
Mhm.
of love the land of concrete numbers and figures and
Yes.
whatever,
Yep.
then you
Yeah, yeah,
have to have the
totally.
science there in order to get that buy-in, right?
It's exactly that. So
Mm.
we've got the quantitative plus the qualitative as the
Mhm.
total value, and then we price off the total value. And I have my clients run numbers, run scenarios in advance
Mhm.
so that they have a reasonable degree of confidence that they
Right.
can save their client $500,000 in taxes or $100,000 in taxes or $25,000 in taxes, whatever it might be.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
then but that is the underpinning of the total
Right.
value. We move up to the total value. We go test it in the marketplace. We get a yes or a no.
Right.
The first one, we tend to underprice a little bit
Mhm.
because I want them to go into the conversation feeling confident rather than
Mhm.
having sweaty palms, which doesn't
Right.
help,
Right.
to increase the likelihood of a yes. And then we get a yes. Then we say, okay, great. Let's test it again at the same price. Let's
Mhm.
confirm. Now we've got 2 data points. You can draw a line through two data points.
Right.
Let's test it a third time. Now you've got confirmation that your line is okay. And
Mhm.
then let's bump it up from there and see what happens. We're
Right.
not always going to maximize price,
Mhm.
but we want to understand where people start to push away from their desk and go
Yeah.
and suck air through their teeth and say, "Oh, I've got to talk to my spouse,"
Mhm.
compared to the
Right.
easy yes, where they say,
Right.
"Oh, that sounds great. Sign me up. When can I start?"
Right.
Right? We want to understand, we want to find the place where they push away
Boundaries.
from their desk
Mm.
so that we can go, "Oh, okay, maybe the price limit is up there and maybe we'll dial down or maybe we'll leave it there because we are so far beyond capacity that we actually need to be pricing people out."
Mhm.
Depends on the circumstance, the
Yeah.
pricing choices that we make. But anyways, coming back to total value
Mhm.
equals quantitative value plus
Right.
qualitative value, and then taking pricing at perhaps 30% of that or 20% of
Mhm.
that or 10% of
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
bronze, silver, gold packages, options.
Right.
That's kind of how we back into that.
Right. Right. Excellent. I love it. It's totally aligned with how I work with people as well. And, being able to quantify the value, both the things that seem more quantitative and those things that are qualitative that are easier to do. It's so important. And I just can't. I love the fact that you do that. I've really not met very many people that approach it from this context. And a lot of people, a lot of accountants, lawyers, people who traditionally work based on hourly rates would argue that it's not possible. Right?
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Well, I'm glad they're talking to you.
I hear it all the time. Oh, that's not possible. We can't do that in my industry. Yeah.
Yeah. That is going thinking, and it's only a thought,
Mhm.
right? I can't
Right.
do that in my industry is not a thought. They think that that's a fact,
Right.
but it's just a thought. A fact is the Rangers beat the Devils 5-4 in overtime last night. Right? That's a fact. But we tend to convince ourselves of our thoughts as if they're
Right.
true just because we've thought them so many times. So we
Mhm.
need to separate out what are facts and what are in fact just beliefs
Right.
that feel super true because we've thought them so many times and because we've sought and confirmed our data with other people in the industry who
Right.
also haven't figured it out.
Well, it's a way of
But I'm here to
hiding.
tell you that there are plenty of lawyers and accountants. There are plenty of accountants for sure who have moved off hourly
Mhm.
billing. And I
Right.
had a lawyer on my podcast, Digby Lee, episode 180, maybe
Mhm.
185, who is pioneering getting off hourly billing in the legal
Right.
space. It's absolutely being done. And
Right.
just quickly, yesterday
Mhm.
I write emails to my list daily.
Mhm.
And yesterday I wrote an email about where does the hour come from? Where does the
Mhm.
second come from? Why do we even have seconds? What are they? And that the measure of a second is 9 billion phases of a cesium atom. So you tell me how your value and how your
It's not.
bill for an hour's worth of work, or I'm going to bill them for 3 hours, $900, is
Right.
connected to the phase of a cesium atom. There's
Mhm.
no correlation there. It is sheer
Right.
lunacy to
Right.
price your service based on time you spent. It
Yeah.
makes absolutely no sense at all.
Well, we could speak for another 30 minutes on that just
Yeah.
alone if if we so chose to
Yes.
have
Topic
some
for
very
another time. I'm sure you cover it.
opinions as well.
Yes. Yes.
So, I'd like to, before we start wrapping it up, I have one more question I'd like to ask you, and that's, there's a lot of people out there who are thinking, okay, I get it. I feel like pricing is this voodoo mystery thing to me as well. What can I do to make it easier? What would you say to them?
What can I do to make it easier?
Mhm.
So if pricing feels voodoo and mysterious to you, so first of all, change the thought pricing is mysterious, because when you think that, pricing is just going to continue to be mysterious, right? You just
Mhm.
self-fulfilling prophecy. So pricing is something I can learn, right? You
Mhm.
think pricing is something I can learn, then your next action is go to
Right.
Amazon, pick up 3 books on pricing, start reading.
Mhm.
Pricing is not once you start reading about it, it actually makes a lot of sense, and
Mhm.
you will start to see pricing examples in your own life, in your own daily life, and you'll start to understand the choices that you're making, and you'll start
Right.
to ask yourself, why is this price okay with me relative to the value that I think I'm going to get?
Mhm.
And you will
Mhm.
become a student, an observer of your
Mhm.
own purchasing choices,
Mhm.
and that will help you come to appreciate
Mhm.
and understand value. And
Mhm.
when you understand value, pricing will become so much easier. Then it's
Yeah.
nothing but mechanics. So
Yeah.
really focus
That's
on
the key.
understanding value,
Yeah.
and then pricing mechanics just fall out of it.
Yeah. The key that unlocks that little box of mystery for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate it. Okay, let's wrap this up with a few more questions. What is the best business advice that you've been given in your own entrepreneurial journey?
Same thing. Follow the value.
Thought value.
And I would add to that,
Mhm.
look for expensive problems, because people will pay to have their problem solved.
Mhm.
So the more expensive a problem is to a person, the
Mhm.
more they will pay to have it solved.
Mhm.
So keep digging and digging and digging
Right.
until you find to find increasingly expensive problems,
Mhm.
and then find the solution, look to create a solution that gets your clients the best possible results in the shortest amount of time. That's the most valuable.
Yeah. And that's just to segue on that one for a moment. If you're looking to deliver them, do it in the shortest amount of time is another reason not to price by the hour.
Oh God, right. Bingo.
Right?
Yeah, it's lunacy. Let me make it take 24 months for my client to lose 7 pounds. No, help your client lose 7 pounds in 7 weeks. It's way more valuable.
And
Nobody
don't
wants to
charge
stretch
them
that out.
less. I
Yes,
mean,
charge
7
them
weeks is
more.
actually a benefit, right?
Yes, of course. My wedding was 23 months ago. I don't wanna lose the weight after I fit into my wedding. I couldn't fit into my wedding. That makes no sense.
Yeah.
Best possible results in the shortest amount of time. Charge them more for that. That's what they want.
Excellent. Favorite book or tool you'd like to share with us?
So I already shared Alan Weiss's value-based fees. If for folks who, let's see, favorite book or tool, favorite book or tool I would like to share. The book Subscribed by Tianzuo.
Don't know it.
Yeah, excellent book. Also on my bookshelf, but you can't see it. It's out of the picture. And an excellent mind business model shift, business mindset shift on the on creating ongoing value for your clients. So that's the tie back, right? Is like, what is the endless stream of benefits that you can create for your client such that they are a customer for life?
For life. Okay. Excellent. I love that. Customer journey. So important. Okay. 2 more questions. One thing that you think people should take away from our discussion today?
Well, if we haven't hammered it on it enough, learn to understand value. Learn to understand value. What is the value that you provide? It's not in the service that you offer in the NLP or in the whatever, the way that you deliver your thing. Understand what it is that your clients really want from the thing that you're giving them. And if you're still stuck on hourly billing, by goodness, get off of it as fast as you can. It is carcinogenic. In enough time, it will kill you. Yeah.
One more time. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, Geraldine, where can people reach out if they'd like to find out more about working with you and what you have to offer?
Sure. So, like you, I have a podcast. It's the Business Strategy for CPAs podcast. People can connect with me on LinkedIn. You've got it up. And if people want to download my scorecard for how you think in your business, you can. I've created a scorecard to help people rate the quality of their thinking in their business. It's the $10,000 CPA scorecard, but it applies to any business owner, and you can get that at my website, shethinksbigcoaching.com.
She Thinks Big Coaching. Okay, we'll put those links in the show notes so that you all have them ready and at hand for you. Geraldine, thank you so much for being on the show with me today. That was fantastic and lots of goodies in there for the listeners.
Thank you, Janine. It's been lovely to be with you.
Yeah. So everyone, thank you so much for joining us today, whether you're joining us live or watching the recording or listening to the podcast later. We so very much appreciate you being here. I have got coming up on May 17th and 18th a live web class, The 5 Steps to Pricing Success. If you'd like to join us for that, I just almost erased my link, but here it is. You can join us at thepricinglady.com/webinars. You'll get all the details and you can register there. With that, I wish you all the best. And as always, everyone, enjoy pricing. See you soon.